This is the next in my series of Saturday Superlatives. Obviously, it's on Sunday, but looking back at this past Saturday, and a lot of quarterbacks lit it up. A lot of people are very excited about what the future holds for Justin Fields, and if you love football, why wouldn't you be excited about what the future holds? There's a lot of terrific young quarterbacks. He was 28 of 34, 318 yards, 4 TDs. He showed you a little bit of everything. He showed you some touch, some anticipation, some arm strength, pocket movement, moving outside the pocket, running with the ball if you needed to. A guy who's a little less athletic but still fun to watch is Kyle Trask. 21, 36, 345 yards, 4 TDs, 1 pick. And he's probably a guy who's sort of a high-end backup, borderline starter type. But in the right situation, I could see him thriving. And then, of course, a guy who's not draft eligible, but everyone's excited about him and has been excited about him since he first got to Chapel Hill is Sam Howell. And though it was in a loss, Howell was spectacular. Only 5 balls hit the ground from him, 23 of 28, 443 yards, 4 TDs. And good things are coming in Carolina. This team, I think, is a year away from being a legitimate threat in the ACC. Bo Nix. I have been, frankly, rather critical of Bo Nix, but he showed up and showed out. 18 of 24, 299 yards, 3 TDs, and a rushing touchdown. He was, frankly, the most dangerous man on the field most of that day. Desmond Ritter, yay! Desmond Ritter doesn't know this yet, but he's been my godson in essence since he arrived at Cincinnati. I was very early in on him, and he was on my all-emerging team as starting quarterback a couple years ago. Then had a bit of a down year last year, but I am very proud and happy to announce that Desmond Ritter, I cannot be anything close to objective about him, is back in full force. And he looked great. 271 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also rushed for 2 touchdowns and 81 yards. I mean, very similar to the kind of day Bo Nix had, quite frankly. And both those guys are guys that have been up and down in times in the past, but have looked good recently. Spencer Saunders, once again, magnificent in defeat. And, he really had 1 or 2 mistakes, but those mistakes really ended up costing them. And he went for 400 yards passing and was 27 of 39, 4 TDs, 1 interception. Once again, he moved well, both inside and outside the pocket. And, if only they had, 1 or 2 things go better their way, if they're in special teams, some mistakes in defense, special teams really prevent them winning a game that they otherwise really should have won. And DJ Ongulele is, well, once again, they call him Big Cinco for a reason. That is a big boy. Legitimately 6'3" and 3/4, about 251 pounds with an extremely strong arm. I don't know. Everyone's sort of raving about Zach Wilson at BYU. I don't know if I've seen a stronger arm this year so far than that young man. And for a guy, once again, we talked about TJ Finley previously, who's just out there figuring it out as a very young player, to go 30 of 41, a couple of touchdowns, 2 passing, 1 rushing. He looked like he belonged. And, of course, he'll get one more chance, at least one more chance, next week against Notre Dame, which is a much better defense. And I have to mention Hinden Hooker. First of all, he's the son of a guy that I scouted, Alan Hooker, who is a HBCU legend. And Hinden Hooker went 10 of 10. No balls hit the ground, so I had to shout him out. He had also 183 yards passing and 3 TDs. And I think at some point he's going to establish himself as the guy down there in Blacksburg. Also, Jack Sears, right? Last seen at USC, losing the quarterback battle to JT Daniels and to Keaton Slovis, has found his way as a graduate transfer to Boise State, and he just was amazing. So once again, 17 of 20. That means only, once again, 3 balls hit the turf. That's not a bad performance in practice, in shirts, in t-shirts and shorts. He also, in addition to a great day passing the ball with 3 TDs, he also rushed for a TD, and I think had a couple of carries for 8 yards. And once again, a guy that's most likely, a priority undrafted free agent, but in the right situation, he could push. I mean, look at what is about to happen for Ben DiNucci, and he's a more talented quarterback than Ben DiNucci. He just hasn't had as much chance to show himself. I have to talk about Shane Bushell because, first of all, people aren't talking enough about Shane Bushell. And I know he's not a huge guy, and he has an above average, but not a ridiculous arm, but I think, once again, in the right situation, the right system, Shane Bushell could be an NFL starter. 23 of 28. Once again, only 5 balls hit the ground, 300 yards, 3 TDs. And it's really sort of a ho-hum day for Shane Bushell. But once again, it's only because he set the bar so high. Here's a guy that I've only started watching recently, and each time I watch him, and I liked him more each time I've watched him. It's Carson Strong. First of all, terrific quarterback name, Carson Strong. I mean, his parents clearly knew he was going to be a QB one day. But he is tearing it up at Nevada, 21 of 27. He had 350 yards passing, 2 TDs, and we'll be hearing from him more in the future. And last but not least, Tulia Tangavaloa, obviously the younger brother of Tua. He had a bounce-back game. He looked really kind of shaky when last we saw him. But he was 26 of 35. He had 394 yards passing. He moved well. He had 3 TDs as a passer, 1 as a rusher. And he had 8 carries for 64 yards. Russell Wilson is kind of a comparison I've heard offered for him. Now, obviously, he's going to need to become a much better guy in terms of things like touch, anticipation, seeing the whole field. But once again, he's very young. But that's the quarterbacks for my Saturday Superlatives.